Virtual World is a deck that I have held near and dear to my heart ever since its release. I've played it casually on and off for a number of years, exploring different deck profiles and strategies, and I always love watching deck profiles for both Master Duel and TCG. Whenever the deck shows up in an event, I'm usually rooting for it. But over the years, I've noticed an unfortunate pattern with the archetype that's kind of left a sour taste in my mouth. Virtual World is kind of scummy. Now, what I mean by this is that the deck is always trying to end on a board that just makes it so your opponent can't play. Now, of course, every single deck is trying to stop their opponent to some degree, whether it be hand traps or just like, ending on some generic negates or pops or whatever. But Virtual World always seems to take it to like a new level. It's not just trying to, interact with your opponent, it's trying to make it so they can't even try. And, sure, there's some joy to pulling off a cool combo that your opponent can't break, but I think the best parts of Yu-Gi-Oh! Are the ones when both players can actually play. And so today, I'd like to go through some of the deck lists, some of the combos that Virtual World can do, and maybe try and show off a way that they can be modified to be more fair, more interactable, more fun for players that are like myself. Because I really think that Virtual World has a lot of really cool things that it can do that aren't super scummy, that don't just get the opponent to see, oh, you've got full combo, I guess I'll surrender now because I can't beat Crystal Wing Kaliga with this hand, or I can't beat a Godam's hand loop. So, I guess first of all, I'll just get started off with just the Virtual World cards for those who are uninitiated. Most of the Virtual World cards have an effect where you can target a Virtual World card on your field and send a card of a different type, so monster, spell, or trap, from your deck to the graveyard, and then special summon the card, and then they have a secondary effect. Lulu's the best one. It lets you add a card of the third type, so if you target a trap card, you could send a spell card, summon itself, and then add a monster, GG lets you at the end of the turn add a Virtual World card or Virtual World monster from your graveyard to your hand. Usually you're using it to get back your Lulu. Lily lets you send a card of the third type to the graveyard. So if you send a trap, if you target a monster, send a trap, then you could summon it and send a spell. And then Lao Lao lets you reborn a Virtual World monster from your graveyard. There's also Nyan Nyan, which doesn't have the special summon effect that the others do, but instead it has the effect where whenever a level 3 monster is normal or special summoned to your field while this card's in your graveyard, you can special summon it as a tuner, but then banish it when it leaves the field. And then when it's banished, you get to recycle a banished card. There's also Tutu, which isn't played as often anymore. You can normal summon it as a level 6 monster if you only have psychics or worms or if control no monsters. And if it's in your grave, you can discard a psychic or worm to special summon it as a tuner. And then it locks you into only summoning level or rank 3 or higher monsters. There's also Kowloon, which is their normal spell that lets you activate any of their other spell traps directly from the deck. The 3 gate cards. The first gate card is, I'm going to mess up all the translations, Kinglong. This card's main effect is you can banish it from the grave to add a Virtual World monster from your deck to your hand and then discard a card, but it can also be used to banish a Virtual World from the grave to negate the effects of a monster on the field. Chuche has a graveyard effect where you can banish it to modify the levels of a Virtual World, either increasing or decreasing it by 3. And while it's on the field, you can target a face-up card, shuffle 2 of your banished Virtual Worlds from different names into the deck, and then destroy the card. And Zhuanwu has some dumb battle phase effect on the field, but you mainly use it in the graveyard to banish it to special summon a Virtual World, and then you discard a card. E-Telly is really good in this deck. It summons your Nyan Nyan or your Lulu. Pot of Desires is pretty good, as any of your banished cards you can put back with the Nyan Nyan effect. And then Foolish Burial Goods is good to get any of your gates into the grave. Virtual World also has a number of extra deck monsters. It's got a whopping 4 Xyzs and 2 Synchros. The Synchros are the ones that are mostly played. Juju is pretty much towers as long as you have 2 monsters in your graveyard with the same original type and attribute, and you can banish 2 monsters with the same original type and attribute from your graveyard to pop a card on the field. Shen Shen is a little bit worse than Macrocosmos on legs. It only sends cards from the field, or cards that are going from the field to the graveyard get banished, but you can also reborn itself by banishing 2 other monsters from your graveyard with different types and attributes. And also when you attack, you can return a banished card from or a banished monster from the owner's graveyard. To the owner's graveyard. Shaja is a rank 3 you can make. That's very good for making Zeus. Long Lung is kind of bad. It kind of stops hand traps. Fan Fan is pretty good removal. And the newest card, Fufu, is just a monster negate. These cards can very easily facilitate rank 3, 6, and 9s, as well as Synchro 6 and 9 plays. And I guess I'll start off by showing probably one of the most infamous ones of the bunch, which is the True King of All Calamities deck that started off this whole archetype. Pretty much when this archetype released, it was making this card. You're very easily putting 2 level 9s on the field, usually with something like Cloud Castle, and then the Dex and Archetype Synchro 9, Shen Shen, to overlay into True King of All Calamities, which just is a disgusting card. But there is a number of rank 9s that you can make now that True King of All Calamities is banned that aren't quite as disgusting. One that I see a lot, or ones that I've tried out a lot rather, is the Generator Boss of Shadows, the new Generator card. It just takes 2 or more level 9 monsters, which you could get out 3, even 4 level 9s pretty reasonably with Cloud Castle, which is not once per turn. You can just keep reborning level 9s from your grave. This card has the effect where you can tag it out into the other generator, rank 9, and then non-targeting, attach cards from the field, either field, to it as material. So this can be a really good way to out pretty much whatever the heck your opponent has going on. It could be good going first, good going second. It's just a good, powerful card. My personal favorite way to play the rank 9S strategy is with Sacred Tree Priest Hyperiton. It's probably my favorite card from Blazing Vortex. I absolutely love this guy. So what it is it's kind of like Mechaba, where whenever your opponent activates a card or effect, you can detach a material of the same type, monster, spell, or trap, to negate it. And so during your turn, when you activate a card or effect, you can target a card in your graveyard with the same type, monster, spell, or trap, and attach it. So during your turn, you get it online, and then you activate your spell cards, your trap cards, to get them other ones from your graveyard to it, and then on your opponent's turn, it can negate pretty much whatever you want. I really do like this card. And then if you want to play a much more pure strategy, you could always play the new Tiger guy. It's not very good, I don't think. It lets you detach a material from the card to target an effect monster on either field, with different types and attributes from each other to negate their effects. Usually, you're probably going to be ending with just it on the field. The deck doesn't really make. It uses pretty much all of its resources to make a rank 9. You're usually not ending on a rank 9 plus some other stuff, but so oftentimes you're going to be negating your own Fufu. But it's a card, and then for just going second, you can also very easily make things like Phantom Fortress, Enter Blathnir, which is pretty powerful. Banishing cards from your opponent's field or graveyard. It's non-targeting, non-destruction removal. Of course, the deck can also play Zeus. Like with Boss of Shadows, if you can get more than 2 level 9s, if you can get 3 level 9s under it and attack into something, you can make a 4-mat Zeus. That's pretty cool. You could do the same thing with Fufu, actually. It takes any number of rank 9s or level 9s as long as it's 2. But yeah, so Virtual Road is pretty good at making a rank 9 strategy, and I think that there's 3 here that are, well, Fufu's not very good, but the other 2 I think definitely have some potential. Hyperiton or the generators plus Choo Choo is usually enough to prevent your opponent from killing you. The next one I want to talk about is there's a strategy that I've run into a lot where the deck can make rank 9s or rank 6s very easily, and so you make Beatrice and you use its effect to send something like Spell Counselor, Fossil Dyna, Pachycephalo, or any of the barrier statues. Previously, it was used a lot to send Artifact Scythe. And then you also make Dragonlark Parent. During your opponent's standby phase, you just special summon the monster. And pretty much make it so your opponent, can't activate spell cards, can't special summon monsters, or just can't special summon monsters of a specific type, It's very degenerate, of course, especially if it was with Scythe, since Scythe is a lingering effect. Like, technically you could out these cards with, like, Kaijus or Yeah, I guess you couldn't with Fossil Dinopachycephala. You'd need a specific kaiju, I suppose. With special summoning ones, you could always use, I don't know, Lightning Storm or Raigeki or whatever. And then for Spell Counselor, you could use a kaiju or just, even just like a Kashtira walk over it would work. But Chuche is usually paired with Aeon Board to protect it. But of course, some more interesting things I think you can do besides making Beatrice and Dragonlark. There's a couple good rank 6s out there that you can make. Of course, there's the new Evolve Sar Lars, which is a face-up card negate, which is pretty powerful. Photon Strike Bouncer is my personal favorite, although I don't think it's the best. It's a face-up monster negate, and then it burns your opponent for 1,000. If you're looking for something a little more weird, there's Force Focus, which negates a level 5 or higher effect monster. That could be getting at something like Cash, I guess. And then there's Wallow, which is a pretty popular one in rank 6 strategies these days. It's kind of like a DD Crow. You get to target a card in your opponent's graveyard, either return it to the deck or special summon it or set the card to your field. And then for going second, of course, Fan Fan is pretty powerful removal. Utopia Beyond is pretty good for OTKing. Constellar M7 can either be used to recycle your own cards or bounce your opponent's. Even things like Gauntlet Launcher or Jinzo Laird can be like pretty solid removal, I guess. And then of course the deck can very easily make rank 3s as well, and cards like Jaja or Fortune Tune are just really good ways to make Zeus. So yeah, like Virtual World is pretty damn good at doing the whole XC stuff. Another really terrible deck strategy I've been seeing lately, I've run into it a couple times now, is the Mayakashi lock. So for those who don't know, all you really have to do is you make Beatrice, which the deck can do very easily, and you send this card, Angel of Blue Tears, to the graveyard. And this card is whenever you take effect damage, you can banish it from your grave to set a normal trap directly from your deck. So then what you're going to do is you're going to make Blackwing Nothing the Starlight, which burns you for 800 on summon. You then use Angel to set this card, a Masterful Mayakashi Shiranui Saga. Then you're going to use the Blackwing card in any of your level 3 tuners to make Yoko the Graceful Mayakashi. And then on your opponent's draw phase, you activate the trap, tributing the Mayakashi, and now your opponent can't special summon monsters from the hand deck or extra deck for the rest of the turn. It's a lingering floodgate. There's not really much counterplay around it. It's just a really scummy strategy. But that's something you can do. I think it's one of the more scummy ones that's out and about right now. Another thing the deck can do is it can very easily spam out a lot of level 9 synchros. And so what this has been used for in the past, I've seen it a lot on Master Duel, is for looping XX Saber Gotems to loop your opponent. So pretty much how this works, one card that's really good is Beast of the Pharaoh because it special summons itself back. It's pretty much infinite synchro material. So what you do is you summon XX Saber Gotems, tribute it to discard a random card from your opponent's hand, and then you make multiple Cloud Castles to keep reviving it to rip more cards out of their hand. You're going to rip 4 cards out of their hand with just the Cloud Castles, and then you're going to overlay 2 of the Cloud Castles for Enter Blathnir to banish the last card out of their hand. You're usually going to end on Chuche anyway for the last card, and then on your opponent's next turn, because they're not going to be able to do anything, because you've hand looped them for 5. Their 1 card hand versus your interruption usually is going to result in them passing, and then you just OTK them the next turn. Something else you can do with the synchro spamming is there's a couple good level 9 synchros. Any combination of Shen Shen, Ravenous Croco Dragon, or Stellar Wind Wolfrat usually is enough to put up a good fight against most decks. Shen Shen, of course, just banishes any card sent from the field to the graveyard. Croco Dragon is besides being draw power, like Croco Dragon, Stardust Charge Warrior, and Coral Dragon, you can draw like 3 or 4 cards a turn. But it's also just a targeted destruction, which on Shen Shen means a targeted banish. Or when Shen's on the field, it means a targeted banish. Wolfrat, for those who don't know, whenever your opponent activates a monster effect, you get 300 attack, and then once its attack is 4,000, you can shuffle it and all monsters your opponent controls into the deck. So this only needs, what is that? 5 monster effects, which a lot of decks very easily do. A lot of combo decks, like I know Sprite probably does that. I'm sure Kashtira does it. Like a lot of decks like that, you can, as long as your opponent doesn't out the Wolfrat before their 5th monster effect, you can just pretty much wipe their board, wipe all their monsters, and it shuffles them. It's not targeting, it's not destruction. It shuffles them all back into the deck. It's pretty good removal. It usually is enough to just clean up the game, and then on your opponent's on your turn, you just clean them up. And then of course you can also just make Geomathmech Final Sigma. He's just the towers. He's big. He does a lot of damage. I personally don't like this card. I think there's enough decks out there that can make a guy bigger than Geomathmech Final Sigma and can just walk over it. But, you know, if that's what you want to play, that's what you want to play. It's only one card. You could always just fit it into your deck. The next thing that I want to talk about is one that was really popular when I first started playing the deck a lot, or in paper, I guess. And that was the Crystal Wing Kaliga line. So pretty much how this works is over the course of your combo, you will usually go into like a Stardust Charge Warrior, and then like you can combine that with your Lao Lao to make Ultimate Zulkin. This card has the effect whenever you set a card, you get to special summon a level 7 or 8 Dragon Sinker from your extra deck. And so you'll make Zulkin, and then you'll summon Crystal Wing out of your deck. And then you'll make a level 6 Synchro, you'll make Muddy Mud Dragon, and you'll use its effect to fuse with Ultimate Zulkin to end on Invoked Kaliga. So what this does is it sets up a board where your opponent can only activate one monster effect, and then you negate their monster effect with Crystal Wing. So your opponent pretty much just gets skill drained, but everywhere. Their hand, their field, their graveyard. It's pretty disgusting, and most decks need to rely on non-engine in order to out this. There's not really much counterplay. However, I personally like running this deck with some different cards. So, of course, running Crystal Wing on his own is fine. It's a good card, but it's not unfair by any means. But instead of fusing into Invoked Kaliga, I would recommend you could try out Dragoon, you could try out Grapha, Dragon Overlord or Dark World, and my personal favorite, although I don't think it's the best, is the Borreload Furious Dragon. This card's a quick effect pop. You pop a card. It's like DPE. You pop a card in your field and a card on your opponent controls. You just destroy them. Whether this is itself or destroy another card you control. Like you could very easily end with just an extra Nyan on your field that you can just pop. I really like this card myself. I think they're all pretty good cards. If you don't want to summon a Crystal Ring, you don't have a Crystal Wing, you could always make something like a Bezel of the Diabolical Dragons. It's kind of Towers. It's like Towers at home. It's pretty solid. It gets the job done. But I think that this is probably my favorite way to play Virtual right now, is rocking Zulkin and Muddy Mud Dragon to make something else like this. And then I think the final way is the most current way, which is Crimson Dragon. So the deck does not particularly struggle to put up Crimson Dragon and Geomathmech Final Sigma. They're both generic level 12 synchros. You can make them pretty easily, and so then on your opponent's turn, you tag out the Crimson Dragon into Hot Red Dragon Arcfiend King Calamity. Your opponent can't really do anything, and then as long as you have a way to put an extra 1,000 damage on board, you just win the game next turn. It's really degenerate. It's really disgusting. There's not a lot of counterplay to it, outside of non-engine cards specifically. However, how I like to play this way is so you can very easily make Crimson Dragon and Shen Shen. And then instead of taking out Crimson Dragon for just a turn ender, you can go for Crystal Wing, or you can go for Trishula. Just some more, I think, interesting things in King Calamity. I think you could also go into, what's its name? Here it is, Hot Red Dragon Arcfiend Abyss. You could do. Those are just. That's another one you could do. I think that's another very good card. It's a face-up card, negate. Yeah. And you could also always mix up any number of these strategies together, really. You could easily just put in a couple of you could fit a rank 9 into your Crimson Dragon strategy, and so okay, maybe your opponent has a really easy time playing through Shen Shen and a Crystal Wing. Okay, well maybe I'm gonna end on the Generator boss. There's a lot of interesting things that you can actually do with these decks that aren't hand looping or skill draining your opponent or just ending their entire turn, preventing them from summoning anything. And I personally really like to see more interesting methods of Virtual being played, and so I just wanted to show off a couple different ways. I unfortunately don't really have any replays to show off. I was a little rushed for making this video. But if you have any other ways that you like to play Virtual World that you think are fun and fair and not scummy, feel free to leave a comment below. If there's any degenerate ways that I missed of playing it, also feel free to leave a comment below. Thank you for watching. Goodbye.